Hi everybody, thank you for joining me today. So today's video, we're going to be using this Mojo Monday sketch number, I think it's 66. I can't see. God, I need glasses. Okay, moving on. So on this sketch, I decided that I was going to do both at one time for you. And what I've done is I have a 6x8 piece of paper from the 6x8 pattern collection from Coco Vanilla. And basically I trimmed it down to 5 1/4 by 4. And that gives me 2 card fronts for the cards that we're going to make today. And then when I go to the next size up, I'm going by the measurements that are on the actual sketch itself. But what I also do is I also make sure that I'm creating mats, because eventually these will all have mats on them. And with the mats, I want to make sure I have enough room for the 1/8 of an inch border that's going to be around the pattern paper. But as I go, I'm laying down, I'm looking at the sizes. I can't use that piece because it's just too small for what we're trying to do. So there's that one, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait, it's too long. It wasn't supposed to be that long. So that's why I had to trim it down. And then I'm going to grab and do a different piece of paper for the second card because I didn't have enough of the wood grain. So now that we have our 2 cards, one with the wood grain, one with the pink hearts, I'm going to do our vertical stripe, which is going to be this yellow paper. And with everything that, you do, you can, I guess, how can I explain? Whenever I was like trying to teach people or help people with the making cards, my tip is always to go bigger. So like if you're not sure of the sizes that you're cutting, if you cut the larger sizes first, you still have room to wiggle if you need to fix anything. So I always like laying these out even without the mats to make sure that everything is going to lay right. And then once I had that, I was like, okay, so now I can go and get the mat pieces. So I'm going to wind up using the white for the base mat. I had already cut that. So I'm going to go ahead and lay those on top. And then for the pattern papers, I decided I wanted to use some of the craft paper. I've done this before too. And I'm just going to follow my measurements. So if it's 2 by 3, then my mat page is going to be 2 1/8 by 3 1/8. So I always, just add 1/8 of an inch to whatever the measurement is they're showing. Now, sometimes on card sketches, you'll get the ones where they actually tell you what the mat pieces should be, which is great, but sometimes they do them bigger. So if you like 1/4 of an inch or, a bigger size mat, then you can follow that, or you can do like I do and just shorten it or decrease it to be just the 1/8 of an inch. I'll try and find a sketch where I can point that out in the future. Okay, so we're still cutting our mats. And I'm laying everything out. And even though the wood grain is going to be on top of the brown, it's okay. It's when you're up close on the actual card, you'll see it and it'll be okay. So for the stripe, the yellow stripe, I decided I didn't want the mat to go on the top and the bottom. I just wanted it to kind of peek out on the sides. So as far as the length, I kept it at 4 inches because I want it to go the width of the pattern paper. And then for the mat to stick out on the side, I just added 1/8 of an inch. So if that piece right there, let's say it's 3 inches, so my mat page I would have made 3 1/8 by 4, if that makes sense. All right, so now that we have pretty much all of our pieces figured out, I'm going to grab my stamps. This is the first time I'm using these particular ones, so I was just rubbing my hands along it to kind of what they call season it, and that way you get a nice good stamp when you press down. So there's that, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp the flower. Well, it's actually the leaf. You know, my leaf stamp that I've been infatuated with for like the last couple of sketches. On that same stamp set, there's a small little one. And so I'd never used it before. And I was like, well, this will work. I have a sentiment and I can put it right underneath of it. And it'll be a nice focal image. So I'm just going to huff because it was sitting there for a little bit and I hadn't stamped. So I just want to make sure it was still nice and vibrant. And huffing just means like when you're taking your hands and you're blowing hot air into them, that's what you're doing over top of the stamp, so that way it sort of like reactivates the inking that you've already done, basically. All right, so I've got my my insides for this particular card already done up, so we're going to go ahead and attach that. The white cardstock is cut at 4 by 5 1/4, which makes it like 1/4 of an inch frame all around the actual inside base. And thank God for the wet glue, because I put that on all kinds of crooked. And that's why I use both. I know a lot of times people are like, why? And I'm like, that is why. Because sometimes you lay it down and it's just drunk. It's just cricket. And you need that little bit of time to be able to pick it back up. And using a technique from Kathy Zielske, I'm going to put some washi tape on the inside of my card so that way it lays flat. And it'll allow me to be able to put this whole thing together. And then I'm telling you, this day, I don't know what was happening. I had a lot of drunk sea moments. So you may see a lot of pulling apart. But we're just going to keep on chucking along. And yep, now we got our base down. Okay, so now we just keep layering. And as you do this, you can keep your layers flat to the card. You can add foam tape, which will give it a little bit of dimension. Just keep in mind, depending on where your other papers touch, you may need extra foam tape to make it all nice and even. Meaning, if your bottom piece has foam tape, then your next one up may need one layer of foam tape and then maybe a second layer wherever it's hanging off of it, if it's hanging off the edge. So that way they're still nice and even, if that makes sense. But for me, I think for these cards, because I still have them here in front of me, yeah, everything is pretty much down flat except for our focal image that we will be using some foam tape to lift off of the project to give it some interest. And then some more tape and glue on this, and we'll attach that to our project. And then we'll grab our focal image and get that attached. And then once that is attached, we're going to grab that foam, the foam squares, I believe is what I grab. And that'll give it a little bit of lift. All right. So now in doing this, you could add brads. You could, if you didn't already attach it to the card base, you could add brads. I wouldn't do it now that it's already attached, because you would see the mechanisms, the little points on the inside of the card, which for me, I think is tacky. So I try to do everything. If there's anything that needs to be hidden and not through the card base, I do all on my, I guess, my card front, that I'm working on, and then I attach it to the card base. But once it's on the card base, I know if I want any type of elements like that, I'm going to use enamel dots, which is what I did right there. And you saw me tap it off, and those were the Nuvo, the white Nuvo drops. All right. So here we are, and here's the second one. I just did that one off camera so you wouldn't have to sit and watch me do the whole thing, because everything was exactly the same as the first one that I did. The only thing different is I did my enamel dots going up and down, and I'm just showing you some more of the like scraps and items I have from the Daydream collection. This is a really fun paper collection, and it's so pretty. So here are our close-ups. Thank you guys for joining me today. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and share button, and hit the little bell next to the subscription so that way you get an alert whenever I upload new content. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks again.